They are aware of your power and they are afraid. You are not an ordinary person. You do not live a random life. You've been chosen, you've been called, you have a mission. They knew this from the very beginning. They saw your potential, they realized your light, and that is exactly why they wanted to stop you. But there's one thing they forgot. Destiny cannot be changed by human hands. This is not a game. This is a war. On an invisible battlefield, words become weapons. Thoughts become strategy. They have formed an alliance against you. They have tried every way to discredit you, to drain your energy, to block your path. But they could not extinguish the divine spark within you, because the real power is not outside, but within. Your rise is inevitable. Now is the time to make a decision. Either you will submit to your old chains and accept the story they have written about you, or you will awaken the warrior within you and write your own destiny. Because remember, nothing that stands in the way of a chosen one can stand forever. Now stand up, write 77 in the comments, and keep walking. The air pulsed with unspoken rage, an invisible storm brewing in the space between them. Eyes locked, jaws clenched. This wasn't just a clash of tempers, it was the unearthing of a buried reckoning, the moment long avoided, now clawing its way into reality. The foundation of deceit had cracked, and what once lay hidden in whispers and half-truths was now roaring into the night. No more pretenses, no more careful avoidance. There was only the raw, unfiltered consequence of deception, and the silence before the first blow was louder than any accusation. It was inevitable, the kind of truth that doesn't sit quietly in the background, waiting for permission to be spoken. It forces its way out, wrecking everything in its path. This wasn't about a single argument or a grudge held too long. This was a reckoning that had been simmering beneath the surface, a fire in waiting. And now, confronted with the weight of what they had denied for so long, all that was left was impact, words failing, tempers igniting, fists speaking the language of what had been unsaid. It wasn't just about one person. It was about the weight of revelation crashing into those who had spent years running from it. This was a battle far deeper than flesh, a collision of reality and resistance where illusions had no place to hide. And the force standing at the center of it all, undeniable, unshaken, was a presence too vast to be ignored. This was the moment the facade shattered, the instant they realized there was no more controlling what had been set in motion. The walls of deception had crumbled, and standing in the wreckage, they felt the weight of their own choices bearing down like an anchor. They thought they could contain it, suppress it, weave enough distractions to bury what was undeniable. But deception is a slow unraveling, and once it starts, there's no reversing its course. The truth they feared had wrapped itself around them like chains, tightening with every breath, every second spent trying to deny what could no longer be hidden. It had never been about winning or losing. It had always been about how long they could outrun the inevitable. And now, there was nowhere left to run. The air pulsed with unspoken rage, an invisible storm brewing in the space between them. Eyes locked, jaws clenched. This wasn't just a clash of tempers. It was the unearthing of a buried reckoning, the moment long avoided, now clawing its way into reality. The foundation of deceit had cracked, and what once lay hidden in whispers and half-truths was now roaring into the night. No more pretenses, no more careful avoidance. There was only the raw, unfiltered consequence of deception, and the silence before the first blow was louder than any accusation. It was inevitable, the kind of truth that doesn't sit quietly in the background, waiting for permission to be spoken. It forces its way out, wrecking everything in its path. This wasn't about a single argument or a grudge held too long. This was a reckoning that had been simmering beneath the surface, a fire in waiting. And now, confronted with the weight of what they had denied for so long, all that was left was impact. Words failing, tempers igniting, fists speaking the language of what had been unsaid. It wasn't just about one person. It was about the weight of revelation crashing into those who had spent years running from it. If you feel the abundance of divine love in your heart, now is the time to share it. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. This divine gift will touch not only your life, but the souls of many through this platform. Each of you has a sacred place in God's grand design, and your generosity will be the fruit of our prayers. Act now. Share your blessings to glorify His kingdom, for you were created to do even greater things in God's loving hands. May God bless you. This was a battle far deeper than flesh, a collision of reality and resistance, where illusions had no place to hide, and the force standing at the center of it all, undeniable, unshaken, was a presence too vast to be ignored. This was the moment the facade shattered, the instant they realized there was no more controlling what had been set in motion. The walls of deception had crumbled, and standing in the wreckage, they felt the weight of their own choices bearing down like an anchor. They thought they could contain it, suppress it, weave enough distractions to bury what was undeniable. But deception is a slow unraveling, and once it starts, there's no reversing its course. The truth they feared had wrapped itself around them like chains, tightening with every breath, every second spent trying to deny what could no longer be hidden. It had never been about winning or losing. It had always been about how long they could outrun the inevitable. And now, there was nowhere left to run. The illusions they clung to were dissolving, revealing a reality they had long refused to face. The weight of deception had reached its limit, and the truth was breaking through like sunlight, piercing a storm. What once seemed unshakable was unraveling before their eyes. The energy had shifted. What was hidden could no longer remain in the shadows. The balance had been disturbed, and the consequences were no longer a distant threat, but a force pressing in from all sides. Some things can be delayed, but never avoided. This reckoning had been set in motion long before they even realized it. Like a candle placed in a glass case, they believed the flame of truth could be smothered, contained, hidden from the winds of revelation. But divine fire cannot be restrained. The breath of the Almighty moves where it wills, and when it comes, it sweeps through the lies like a mighty tempest, clearing out every deception, every shadow, every falsehood, built to stand in the way of what was always destined to be revealed. You cannot silence what was spoken into existence by the very hand of creation. You cannot chain the light when it was made to shine. And now, that light has arrived, cracking through the walls of secrecy, tearing apart the veils they so carefully stitched together, exposing what was always meant to come to the surface. There is no silence deep enough to bury the inevitable. They tried, oh how they tried, to lock away the truth, to pretend, to orchestrate a grand illusion where their version of events would remain unchallenged. But secrets, no matter how carefully guarded, find their way into the open. The undercurrent of suspicion had been building, and now the dam had burst. No more whispered conversations in hushed rooms, no more quiet maneuvers behind closed doors. The very words they spoke in the shadows had now become the very stones laid upon the path of their undoing. What they believed was safely concealed had begun to surface in ways beyond their control. What they feared the most had now come knocking at their door, and there is no turning it away. The same walls they built for protection had turned into a prison. The very structures they leaned on, the networks they depended on, the narratives they spun so carefully, each one now shifting beneath them, unstable, unreliable, falling apart like sand slipping through open fingers. The weight of exposure was pressing down, heavy, relentless, unstoppable. The truth had grown too large, too undeniable, too woven into reality to be dismissed. And now, everything built on pretense was crumbling beneath the pressure, buckling under the force of what was always meant to come to light. They thought they could play both sides, whisper one thing in the dark and declare another in the light, speak with two tongues and walk with two faces, convincing the world they were something they never truly were. But there is a cost to deception. You do not stand in the presence of divine order and think you can manipulate your way through it. What they thought was cunning was, in truth, a slow and steady fall into their own undoing. The moment they chose to move against what was right, they set their course. The moment they chose to betray what was divinely established, they stepped into the consequences of their own making. The weight of their choices is no longer just an internal struggle. It is written across their faces, felt in every room they walk into. Eyes linger too long. Conversations cut off when they enter. The once assured presence they carried now feels uncertain, fractured, hesitant. People see them differently now. The image they projected is no longer believable. The influence they relied on has begun to slip, and no amount of control can grasp what is already being pulled away. It's not punishment, it's simply the order of things. What is built on falsehoods will never stand. What is constructed through deception will never endure. The shaking has come, and what remains will be only what was rooted in truth. And you have not had to lift a hand. You have not had to force anything. The truth is not a battle to be fought. It is a force that moves on its own, working through every event, every conversation, every shift in the atmosphere. You do not chase justice. Justice has already been set in motion. You do not seek revenge. The divine has already accounted for every word spoken, every move made, every deception attempted. Like a tree planted by the river, you do not fear the shifting winds. Storms may come, and the rain may beat down, but your roots go deep, anchored in something far greater than what is seen. The world may shake, people may turn, and the noise of accusation may rise, but you remain steadfast, unshaken, unmovable. Because when God plants something, no storm, no betrayal, no opposition can uproot it. What is established in divine hands will always withstand the test of time. Seasons may change, but the truth does not bow to the temporary. And you, chosen and called, were never meant to waver in the face of what is fleeting. So you stand, not shaken, not moved, not troubled by the unfolding of events. Because when you are aligned with divine truth, there is no need for reaction. The power is in moving forward. The power is in knowing that the storm only clears the way for what is greater. And when the dust settles, when the false voices grow silent, when everything that was built on pretense falls away, the only thing that will remain standing is what was always meant to last. They never thought the truth would find its way through the cracks. They believed if they covered enough, if they controlled the right people, if they spoke the right words at the right time, they could dictate the outcome. But what they failed to understand is that truth is not something you can manage. Truth is like the morning. It always comes. No matter how long the night, no matter how dark the deception, the light will rise, and what was hidden will be seen for what it truly is. Dear brothers and sisters, may God's peace be upon you today. I am here to remind you of a profound truth. Our existence is grounded in God's divine plan, unshaken by the temporal concerns of the world. As the Bible says, whatever is done in faith will return to God in abundant blessing. Luke 6:38. Like that great oak tree, our roots are deeply rooted in God's universal truth. Every step we take, every stand we take, is secured by His strength. And now, you are being offered the opportunity to be part of that blessing. When you use the Super Thank You button and donate $100, this movement will return to you 100-fold in abundance. They built their illusions with careful hands, crafting stories that served their purpose, setting traps with words laced in deceit. They made plans, calculations, arrangements, thinking they could move unseen. But the unseen sees all. The divine does not need whispers or confessions. Every thought, every intention, every hidden move has already been accounted for. The weight of deception does not disappear simply because it is ignored. It collects, it builds, and when the time comes, it collapses under its own weight. And now, they feel it. The unraveling, the shift, the moment when control slips through their fingers, and the very things they trusted to protect them are now turning against them. The lies that once served as their shield are now their chains. The very people they sought to influence are now watching them with new eyes. What they once carried with confidence is now heavy with fear. Because when the foundation is not truth, there is no standing firm. Like a river carved by the hand of God, truth does not need permission to flow. It moves where it wills, reshaping landscapes, cutting through mountains, turning the hardest stone into dust. No dam built by human hands can stop what was always meant to break through. No amount of planning, scheming, or resisting can hold back the course of divine justice. And when the floodgates open, when the weight of what has been hidden crashes into the world, nothing can stand against it. Because what was spoken by the Most High will always come to pass. No force on earth, no deception, no manipulation can alter what was ordained before time itself. They thought they could dictate how this would end. They thought they could move the pieces in their favor. They strategized, whispered in secret, built their plans in the cover of darkness, thinking they held control in their hands. But deception only runs so far before it runs into something greater. A lie may travel fast, but truth is what lasts. And when truth arrives, it does not negotiate. It does not ask permission. It does not wait to be welcomed. It comes like a roaring tide, sweeping away every falsehood, every scheme, every carefully constructed illusion. And you never had to chase them. You never had to fight. Because the battle was never yours. It was handled before it even began. The divine does not need defense. It speaks for itself. The truth does not need an army. It stands on its own. You were never meant to lower yourself into the dirt to wrestle with deception. You were never called to prove what was always evident. When you carry the light, darkness reveals itself. When you walk in divine authority, every falsehood crumbles under the weight of what is real. They thought they could rewrite the story, but the ink had already dried. They believed if they moved quickly enough, if they controlled enough voices, they could shape the outcome. But they forgot one thing. What God ordains cannot be overturned. What is set in motion by divine hands cannot be undone by mortal schemes. And now, the ground beneath them trembles. What they built is cracking, the weight of their own deception pressing down like an unbearable burden. The same words they spoke in confidence are now the very words exposing them. The same hands they used to deceive are now trembling under the consequences of their own making. They sense it now, the shift, the unraveling, the undeniable truth creeping in like the dawn after the longest night. Their grip is slipping, their control unraveling, their influence diminishing. They can feel the air change, the way eyes look at them differently, the way their words no longer carry the weight they once did. Because trust, once broken, does not repair itself with empty apologies. Respect, once lost, does not return through desperate explanations. What is built on deception will always crumble, and the time for pretending has come to an end. And you keep walking. You don't turn back to watch their collapse. You don't waste time proving what is already evident. Because truth is not something that requires effort to sustain. It stands on its own. You are not weighed down by their downfall, because their downfall was never your focus. Your focus is forward. Your calling is higher. Your destiny was never tied to their approval. And your path was never dependent on their acceptance. The door that closed behind you was not a loss. It was protection. The people who turned away were not a failure. They were a lesson. And the battle you never had to fight was not yours to begin with. It was already won before you ever stepped into this moment. Like a man trying to hold back the tide with his bare hands, they thought they could stop what was already set in motion. They stood at the edge of the ocean, commanding the waves to retreat, believing their words held power over what was never theirs to control. But the tide does not answer to human voices. It moves according to a greater force, a divine rhythm, set in place long before they ever imagined they had influence. And now, as the water rises, as the truth surges forward, they are beginning to understand. They were never fighting you. They were fighting the inevitable. They were fighting what was always meant to be. And no amount of resistance, no strategy, no deception can stand against what is divinely ordered. They will learn in their own time that what they fought against was never just you. They thought they were pushing against a person, an individual they could silence, manipulate, or control. But they were resisting something far greater. They were attempting to control what was beyond their reach. They were standing in the path of a force too great to be stopped. And now, as the dust settles and the truth stands unshaken, they are left to face what they tried so hard to avoid. The weight of their choices is no longer an invisible burden. It is real, tangible, pressing down with undeniable force. The same words they once spoke so freely now feel heavy on their tongues. The same confidence they carried is now laced with uncertainty. They sense it in the way people look at them, in the way the very air around them has changed. Conversations that once flowed easily now fall flat. The trust they once took for granted has faded, slipping through their fingers like sand. Because deception has an expiration date. It may hold for a season, it may convince for a moment, but truth always has the final say. And truth does not return void. It does not apologize for its arrival. It does not hesitate to make itself known. And now, as it settles into place, those who fought against it must sit in the reality they created for themselves. They wanted control. They wanted to dictate the terms. They wanted to decide what was seen, what was believed, what was remembered. But the moment they moved against what was righteous, They sealed their own fate. There are some things no man can rewrite. There are some stories no deception can erase. And now, they are left standing in the ruins of their own making, looking at the pieces of a foundation that was never strong enough to last. And you keep walking, because this was never your weight to carry. This was never your battle to fight. The truth does not need defenders. It does not need protection. It simply exists. And as it stands tall, unmoved by the temporary chaos, you move forward, not as a response to them, but as a reflection of who you are. Your steps are ordered. Your purpose is clear. And while they wrestle with the consequences of their own choices, you remain steady. Not because you fought for this moment, but because you were always meant to arrive here. No opposition, no resistance, no amount of deception could change that. Because when God writes the story, no man can edit the ending. When the divine moves, no force can hold it back. And as you step forward, untouched by the destruction behind you, one thing remains certain. What was meant for you has always been yours. No fight required, no struggle needed, just divine alignment, moving in its perfect time, bringing you exactly where you were always meant to be. But you rise, not by force, not by retaliation, not by proving yourself, but by simply walking in what was always meant for you. The storm did not shake you, it revealed you. The battle did not break you, it positioned you. And now, as everything falls into place exactly as it was meant to, you move forward, unbothered, unstoppable, and absolutely victorious. So you stand, not distracted by what they say, not moved by their attempts to twist the narrative. Because what was built in deception will always collapse under the weight of truth. And truth does not hurry. Truth does not shout. Truth does not plead for attention. It simply is. And when all else fades, it will be the only thing left standing. Now is the time to share God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube. You can contribute to His plan and be a part of this divine mission with a donation of $100 or more. Every gift reflects God's generosity, and I believe it will return to you exponentially far beyond your expectations. Remember, His protection and blessing is on your every step and every donation. You become part of His divine plan. You are a strong, radiant being, unshakable as His mighty rock. Witness God's miracles. Feel the fruits of your generosity in your soul and illuminate the world with confidence and courage. Be blessed and let the light of the Lord guide your path. You walk forward, untouched by their chaos, undisturbed by their downfall. Because you were never called to stay in the wreckage. You were never meant to get caught up in their desperation. The moment they chose deception, they chose their end. And you keep walking. Because what is ahead of you is greater than anything they tried to take from you. Your steps are ordered. Your foundation is firm. And while they scramble to hold on to what was never truly theirs, you rise, not by force, not by retaliation, but by the sheer power of divine alignment. What was meant for your harm has become the very thing that lifted you higher. The storm didn't break you. It revealed you. The battle didn't defeat you. It prepared you. And now, as everything settles, as the noise fades and the dust clears, only one thing remains: the purpose, the promise, the destiny that was always yours to walk in. They believed they could navigate both worlds, play the role of the loyal while indulging in betrayal, uphold the appearance of truth while moving in deception. But universal law does not bend to manipulation. The moment they made the choice to act against what was righteous, they sealed their own fate. The world around them was shifting, their influence fading like a candle struggling against the wind. The eyes that once admired them now carried questions. The connections they relied on felt brittle, slipping through their grasp with every passing moment. It wasn't retribution. It was the unraveling of their own design. No foundation built on falsehoods will stand forever. Nothing needed to be forced. The natural order was already at work. The moment had arrived where silence spoke louder than confrontation, where the mere act of moving forward carried more power than any response. No retaliation was necessary. The course had been set, and what must happen would unfold in its own time. While they wrestled with the weight of their choices, the path ahead remained clear, untouched, unobstructed. The real transformation happens not in the chaos of exposure, but in the stillness that follows, where truth reigns, unchallenged, unshaken.